The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 17 species gathered around the crystalline conference table. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire tapped his 6 claws against the surface, creating an agitated rhythm that echoed through the vast dome. His reptilian features twisted into what humans might recognize as a sneer, though his species had evolved the expression independently. The humans refused to submit to proper classification, Kethvar hissed, his forked tongue flicking between razor-sharp teeth. They insist on maintaining their charade of being a peaceful species when clearly they are apex predators of the highest order. Across the table, the insectoid representative from the Hive Collective, designated Speaker Prime Zacth, clicked her mandibles in agreement. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's bioluminescent lighting as she leaned forward on 4 spindly arms. Our intelligence networks have observed their military capabilities. Their warships alone could devastate entire star systems. Yet they persist in claiming they are merely explorers and diplomats. The debate had raged for 3 standard galactic hours. Every species present had their own grievances about humanity's recent entry into galactic society. The humans had appeared seemingly from nowhere 18 months ago, their ships emerging from previously unexplored sectors of the galaxy. They had requested peaceful contact and trade agreements, presenting themselves as a young species eager to learn from their galactic neighbors. But intelligence reports painted a different picture entirely. Their homeworld is a death trap, rumbled Gordhak, the massive stone-skinned representative from the Terran Mining Consortium. Despite the unfortunate naming coincidence, his species had no relation to the human's homeworld. Gravity that would crush most of our kind, atmospheric pressure that requires environmental suits for safe visitation, and weather patterns that shift with deadly unpredictability. The avian delegate from the skyward reach, her feathers ruffling with agitation, chirped her agreement. Our evolutionary biologists studied their physiology from the cultural exchange programs. Humans possess forward-facing eyes, the universal mark of a hunting species. Their dental structure includes pronounced canine teeth designed for tearing flesh. Even their recreational activities involve simulated combat and competition. Ambassador Yelandra of the Peaceful Garden Worlds, a plant-based lifeform whose photosynthetic skin shimmered with anxiety, swayed gently as she spoke. Most disturbing are their entertainment media. We intercepted thousands of their cultural broadcasts. Stories of warfare, violence, survival against impossible odds. They glorify conflict in ways that would traumatize most civilized species. The chamber fell silent as these accusations hung in the air. The Galactic Council had established strict protocols for species classification upon first contact. Predator species required extensive monitoring, trade restrictions, and mandatory military observers. Peaceful herbivorous or omnivorous species enjoyed full diplomatic privileges and unrestricted access to galactic trade networks. Humanity's classification would determine their future in galactic civilization. There is also the matter of their pets, added Councillor Enthgrel from the Aquatic Federation, his gill slits fluttering nervously. Intelligence reports confirm they domesticate other predator species. They live in close proximity to creatures called dogs and cats that show clear carnivorous adaptations. Kethvar's tail lashed behind him as he stood to address the assembly. The evidence is overwhelming. Humans are predators attempting to infiltrate our peaceful galactic community under false pretenses. I motion for immediate reclassification and implementation of predator protocols. A chorus of agreement rose from around the table. Only the representative from the silicon-based collective remained silent, their crystalline form refracting the chamber's light in thoughtful patterns. The chamber's main entrance suddenly hissed open with a sound that caused several delegates to flinch. Through the doorway walked Ambassador Sarah Chen, humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. She moved with the fluid grace that had initially convinced many species of humanity's peaceful nature, but now seemed ominous in light of the accusations. Sarah was of average height for a human, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and wearing the simple blue and white uniform that human diplomats favored. Her brown eyes surveyed the assembly calmly, and several delegates noticed how those forward-facing predator eyes seemed to track each of them individually. Ambassador Chen, Kethvar said, his voice carrying the formal tones required by galactic diplomatic protocol. Your timing is fortuitous. We have been discussing your species' proper classification within galactic society. Sarah took her designated seat at the table, her movements economical and precise. She placed a small data pad before her and folded her hands calmly. I see. And what conclusions has the council reached? The evidence against your people's claims of peaceful intent has become insurmountable, Speaker Prime Zach Th clicked. Your species shows every biological and cultural marker of apex predator behavior. We cannot in good conscience maintain your current classification as a peaceful species. Sarah nodded slowly, her expression neutral. I understand your concerns. May I ask specifically what evidence has led to this conclusion? The accusations poured forth again. The delegates detailed everything they had discovered about human physiology, their homeworld's hostile environment, their military capabilities, their entertainment preferences, and their association with domesticated predators. Throughout the litany of charges, Sarah listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on her data pad. Her calm demeanor seemed to unsettle some of the more nervous delegates, who had expected defensive protests or aggressive rebuttals. When the accusations finally ended, Sarah looked up from her notes and surveyed the assembly. These are serious charges, she said quietly. Before I respond, I'd like to clarify one point. When you speak of predators, are you referring to trained ones or wild ones? The question caught the assembly off guard. Confused chittering, clicking, and rumbling filled the chamber as delegates exchanged glances. Cathvar recovered first. What possible difference could that distinction make? A predator is a predator, regardless of training or domestication. Sarah's lips curved in what might have been a smile, though none of the alien delegates could interpret the expression correctly. Oh, there's quite a significant difference. You see, you're absolutely right about humans being predators. We are apex predators, evolved from hunting species on a world that tried its best to kill us every single day. The chamber erupted in alarmed sounds as delegates realized their suspicions were being confirmed. But Sarah continued speaking, her voice cutting through the noise. However, we are trained predators. We learn to control our instincts, to channel our aggressive tendencies toward productive ends, to cooperate rather than compete when the situation demands it. We developed civilization specifically because we recognized the destructive potential of uncontrolled predator behavior. She stood slowly, her hands still clasped calmly before her. The distinction matters because trained predators make the most effective protectors of peaceful species. Wild predators are threats to be contained or eliminated. Trained predators become guardians. Gordhack's massive stone features shifted into what might have been confusion. You claim to be protectors? Your species has been in galactic society for barely 18 months. Sarah nodded toward the chamber's main display screen. Computer, display Galactic Threat Assessment Report, Classification Level 7. The screen flickered to life, showing a map of the local galactic region. Red zones pulsed ominously along the outer rim territories, and several delegates shifted uncomfortably as they recognized the implications. 3 weeks ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive fleet movements in the void reaches, Sarah continued. A previously unknown species has been systematically destroying every inhabited world in their path. They don't appear interested in conquest or resources. They simply eliminate all other life forms they encounter. The chamber fell silent except for the nervous chittering of a few delegates. The void reaches were considered too dangerous and remote for most galactic civilizations to monitor closely. Our analysis suggests they'll reach the outer territories of established galactic civilization within 6 months, Sarah said calmly. Their technology appears superior to anything currently in the Galactic Council's arsenal. Traditional diplomatic solutions appear unlikely to succeed. Speaker Prime Zach Th's mandibles clicked rapidly. Why are we only hearing of this threat now? Because your species are peaceful, Sarah replied. Your first instinct when faced with an existential threat is to seek diplomatic solutions, to find ways to avoid conflict. These are admirable traits that have allowed galactic civilization to flourish. But they also mean you're unprepared to deal with a species that views all other life as an obstacle to be removed. She gestured toward the display screen where the red zones continued to pulse ominously. Humans have been monitoring this threat since our first deep space patrols encountered the aftermath of their attacks. We've been developing countermeasures and defensive strategies while maintaining our diplomatic initiatives with the Council. Yolandra's photosynthetic skin had shifted to darker, more anxious hues. You're suggesting that humanity has been preparing for war while maintaining peaceful relations with us? We've been preparing to defend peaceful species against an approaching threat, Sarah corrected. There's a significant difference. War implies conquest or aggression for personal gain. Defense implies protection of those unable to protect themselves. Councillor Nthgral's gill slits fluttered rapidly. But, your military capabilities, your warships could devastate entire systems. Sarah's expression grew more serious. They were designed to face a threat capable of destroying entire civilizations. We built them not to conquer, but to ensure that peaceful species like yours continue to exist. She activated her datapad, and new information appeared on the chamber's display screen. Technical specifications, fleet compositions, strategic assessments, all detailing humanity's military preparations. We are indeed apex predators, Sarah continued. We evolved to hunt, to fight, to survive against overwhelming odds. But, we also evolved the intelligence to recognize that our greatest strength comes not from what we can destroy, but from what we choose to protect. The chamber remained silent as delegates absorbed this information. The evidence of human military might was undeniable, but the context had shifted dramatically. Our homeworld is hostile because it taught us to survive anywhere, Sarah explained. Our entertainment focuses on conflict because we understand its reality and prepare our people to face it when necessary. Our pets are domesticated predators because we learned that former enemies can become the most loyal allies. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each delegate who was capable of such contact. The question before this council isn't whether humans are predators. We are, and we've never denied it. The question is whether you want us to be wild predators operating outside galactic law, or trained predators working within your civilization to protect it. Kethvar's claws had stopped their agitated tapping. You're saying humanity wishes to serve as protectors for the Galactic Council? I'm saying humanity recognizes that peaceful civilizations require protection from those who would destroy them, Sarah replied. We're offering our services as that protection. Our fleet movements, our military preparations, our defensive capabilities, all of it has been in service of ensuring that galactic civilization survives the coming threat. The display screen updated again, showing projected battle scenarios and casualty estimates. The numbers were sobering, even accounting for human military intervention. We cannot guarantee victory, Sarah admitted. But we can guarantee that peaceful species will have defenders willing to stand between them and extinction. The choice is yours. You can classify humanity as dangerous predators and attempt to contain us, or you can accept us as trained guardians and allow us to fulfill our purpose. The silence stretched for long moments as delegates considered their options. The threat from the void reaches was real and approaching rapidly. The peaceful species of the galactic community had few options for military resistance. Finally, the crystalline representative from the silicon-based collective spoke for the first time, their voice resonating like struck crystal. Ambassador Chen, what would humanity require in exchange for this protection? Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time since entering the chamber. What any trained predator requires from those they protect. Trust, cooperation, and the understanding that sometimes survival requires accepting help from those who seem dangerous. She gathered her datapad and stood to leave. I'll give the council time to deliberate. But, remember, the distinction between trained and wild predators isn't just about control. It's about purpose. Wild predators serve only themselves. Trained predators can choose to serve something greater. As she moved toward the chamber exit, Sarah paused at the doorway. Oh, and delegates? You might want to review the actual definition of apex predator in your databases. It doesn't just mean we hunt other species. It means we have known natural predators ourselves. That includes the species currently approaching from the void reaches. With that, she left the chamber, leaving the Galactic Council to grapple with a decision that would determine the fate of peaceful civilization itself. Trained or wild ones? The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 12 hours after Ambassador Chen's departure. The chamber's usual serene lighting had been replaced with urgent amber warning signals that cast shifting shadows across the assembled delegates. The crystalline walls hummed with energy as quantum communicators maintained real-time connections to fleet commanders across 17 star systems. Admiral Marcus Torres stood beside the central holographic display, his weathered features illuminated by the tactical projections floating before him. Unlike the diplomatic uniform worn by Ambassador Chen, Torres was dressed in the practical gray and black of the human defense fleet. His presence in the chamber marked the first time a human military officer had been permitted to address the Galactic Council directly. "The situation has deteriorated faster than our worst-case projections," Torres announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades making life-or-death decisions. "Our long-range scouts confirm that the hostile fleet has accelerated their advance. They will reach the outer colonies within 72 standard hours, not the 6 months we originally estimated." The holographic display updated to show the current positions of the approaching threat. Red icons representing enemy vessels moved across the star map like a spreading infection, leaving dead systems in their wake. The scale of the armada was staggering, thousands of ships organized into precise geometric formations that suggested both advanced technology and ruthless efficiency. Kefvar's reptilian features had lost their earlier arrogance, replaced by barely concealed terror. How is such acceleration possible? Our astrophysics departments calculated their maximum velocity based on observed energy signatures. They're not limited by the same physics we understand, Torres replied grimly. Our analysis suggests they're using some form of spacetime manipulation that allows them to compress distance rather than simply traveling faster. It's technology we've never encountered before. Speaker Prime Zach Th's mandibles clicked in rapid, agitated patterns. What are their intentions? Have they responded to any diplomatic overtures? The display shifted to show intercepted communications, or rather, the complete absence of any attempt at communication. Every diplomatic signal sent to the approaching fleet had vanished into electromagnetic silence. They don't communicate, Torres continued. Our xenolinguistics teams have analyzed their behavior patterns across 17 destroyed systems. They arrive, systematically eliminate all forms of life down to the bacterial level, strip any useful resources, and move on. No negotiation, no conquest, no apparent interest in anything except complete eradication of existing life. Gordhack's massive form shifted uneasily, stone grinding against stone. The mining consortium's border worlds have already begun evacuation procedures. But our transport capacity is limited. We cannot move entire planetary populations quickly enough. The chamber filled with the nervous sounds of 17 different species confronting their own mortality. This wasn't a political crisis that could be resolved through negotiation or compromise. This was extinction approaching at an unstoppable pace. Yolandra's photosynthetic skin had shifted to deep purple hues that indicated extreme stress. Perhaps if we offered them uninhabited systems? Surely there must be some form of coexistence possible. Torres shook his head, his expression grim. They destroyed the automated research station in the Kepler void last week. No life forms aboard, just scientific equipment and artificial intelligence systems. They eliminated it anyway. This isn't about territory or resources. They appear to view any form of organized matter as something to be sterilized. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's recycled atmosphere. This wasn't a war in any traditional sense, it was extermination on a galactic scale. Counselor Nthgral's aquatic features rippled with anxiety. What does humanity propose? Your Ambassador Chen spoke of protection, but surely even your military capabilities have limitations. Torres activated a new section of the holographic display. Three-dimensional schematics appeared, showing ship designs that made even the aggressive Zephyrian warships look primitive by comparison. The human vessels were angular, predatory things that seemed designed for maximum lethality rather than aesthetic appeal. We've been preparing for this fight since we first discovered the threat, Torres explained. Every human colony, every outpost, every research station has been contributing to our defensive preparations. We've retrofitted our entire civilian fleet for military operations and accelerated production of specialized combat vessels. The numbers were staggering. Humanity, despite being newcomers to galactic civilization, had assembled a military force that rivaled the combined fleets of all other Council species. "How is such mobilization possible?" demanded Ambassador Vextheri from the Merchant Leagues. "Your species has been in space for less than 2 centuries, according to your own historical records." Torres's expression hardened. "Because we understand what extinction looks like, and we refuse to accept it quietly. Human history is filled with species that didn't adapt quickly enough to survive changing circumstances. We learned early that survival requires being willing to fight for your existence." He gestured toward historical data that appeared on the display. Images of Earth's predator species, of human conflicts throughout history, of technological development driven by necessity rather than curiosity. Every other species in galactic civilization evolved from herbivores or scavengers, Torres continued. You developed technology to improve your quality of life. Humans developed technology to survive against creatures and circumstances that wanted us dead. There's a fundamental difference in approach. The silicon-based collective's crystalline representative chimed with harmonic frequencies that conveyed deep consideration. You're suggesting that humanity's evolutionary background has prepared your species for this type of conflict in ways that peaceful species cannot match. Exactly, Torres confirmed. You've spent millennia learning to cooperate, to find diplomatic solutions, to avoid conflict through compromise. These are valuable traits that created galactic civilization. But they're useless against an enemy that views your existence as an obstacle to be removed. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this harsh reality. Their greatest strengths, their peaceful nature, their diplomatic skills, their cooperative instincts had become liabilities in the face of an implacable enemy. "What specific assistance do you require from the Council?" asked Kefvar, his earlier hostility replaced by practical concern for survival. Torres highlighted several star systems on the tactical display. "We need access to your industrial infrastructure. Human military doctrine relies on rapid deployment and overwhelming firepower, but we lack the manufacturing capacity to sustain a prolonged campaign. Your shipyards, mining operations, and fabrication facilities could provide the resources we need." "And, in exchange," prompted Speaker Prime Zach Th. "We guarantee the survival of your peaceful civilizations," Torres replied simply. "Every human vessel, every weapon system, every tactical innovation we've developed will be deployed to ensure that this threat is eliminated before it can reach your core worlds." The holographic display shifted to show defensive formations and battle plans. Human fleets positioned at critical junction points, ready to intercept the approaching enemy before they could penetrate deeper into galactic civilization. "Our strategy is simple," Torres explained. "We meet them in the outer territories where there are fewer populated systems at risk. We hit them with everything we have, and we don't stop hitting them until either they're destroyed or we are." The brutal efficiency of the plan was unmistakable. No complex maneuvers, no attempts at negotiation or misdirection. Just the direct application of maximum force against an implacable enemy. Yolandra's voice carried a tremor of fear. "And if your strategy fails?" Torres's expression didn't change. "Then, at least peaceful species will know that someone was willing to stand between them and extinction. That's what trained predators do, we fight so others don't have to." The chamber erupted in urgent conversations as delegates consulted with their home governments through quantum communicators. The decision facing them was unprecedented: trust their survival to a species they had been preparing to classify as dangerous predators, or attempt to face the approaching threat with their own limited military capabilities. Ambassador Chen had returned to the chamber during Torres's briefing, taking her seat quietly while the military assessment continued. Now she stood to address the assembly. "I know this is difficult," she said, her voice carrying a gentleness that contrasted sharply with Torres's military pragmatism. "You're being asked to place your trust in creatures you fear, to allow predators into your midst during your most vulnerable moment." She gestured toward the tactical displays still hovering in the chamber's center. "But, consider this, every human ship in those formations could be used to conquer rather than protect. Every weapon system could be turned against civilian populations rather than enemy fleets. Every tactical advantage could be exploited for conquest rather than defense." The truth of her statement was undeniable. The military might that humanity was offering to use in defense of galactic civilization could just as easily be used to subjugate it. We're not asking you to trust us because we're harmless, Chen continued. We're asking you to trust us because we choose to be helpful. The difference between trained and wild predators isn't about capability, it's about choice. She walked around the chamber, addressing each delegation individually. Your species will always have the choice to rebuild after this crisis passes. To develop your own military capabilities if you feel threatened by ours. To establish safeguards against the possibility of human aggression in the future. But only if you survive the next few weeks. The crystalline representative chimed again, their harmonic frequency conveying urgency. The vote must be taken now. Our quantum sensors detect mass displacement in the outer territories. The enemy fleet has begun deceleration maneuvers. Torres confirmed the readings on his tactical display. They're preparing to engage their first targets. We need authorization to deploy human fleets to intercept positions, or our defensive strategy becomes impossible to implement. The chamber fell silent as each delegate faced the most crucial decision in their species' history. Trust the predators they feared, or face extinction alone. Kefvar spoke first, his reptilian features set in grim determination. The Zephyrian Empire authorizes full cooperation with human military forces and grants access to all requested industrial facilities. One by one, the other delegations followed. The Hive Collective, the Terran Mining Consortium, the Skyward Reach, the Peaceful Garden Worlds, each species acknowledging that their survival depended on accepting help from the very predators they had sought to classify as threats. When the final vote was recorded, Torres activated his communicator with practiced efficiency. All fleets, this is command. Authorization confirmed. Proceed to intercept positions and engage on site. Rules of engagement are unlimited, destroy anything that threatens Council space. The holographic display exploded into motion as human fleets across 17 star systems began moving toward their assigned positions. Hundreds of vessels accelerating toward a confrontation that would determine whether peaceful civilization would survive or perish. As the chamber watched their protectors deploy for battle, Ambassador Chen made one final observation that would prove prophetic in the days to come. Remember this moment, she said quietly. Today you learned the difference between predators who hunt and predators who protect. Today you chose to trust in the possibility that dangerous creatures can choose to be guardians instead of threats. The first engagement would begin in 18 hours. Either humanity's promise of protection would prove genuine, or galactic civilization would face its final chapter defended by the very creatures they had once feared most. They quarreled about predator status until she clarified, trained or wild ones? The Battle of the Meridian Gate lasted 14 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, the Galactic Council had learned what humanity meant when they distinguished between trained and wild predators. Admiral Torres stood in the command center of the human flagship Prometheus, his uniform torn and stained with the perspiration of prolonged combat command. Around him, dozens of tactical officers coordinated with the remnants of Task Force Alpha, what had once been humanity's largest deep space fleet and was now a collection of battle-scarred survivors limping back toward Council space. The enemy had been stopped, but the cost had been devastating. Final casualty reports, Admiral, called Commander Sarah Okafor from the communications station, her voice hoarse from hours of relaying orders across the combat zone. 67% fleet losses. The destroyers Marcus Aurelius and Sun Tzu were total losses with all hands. The cruiser divisions took heavy damage but maintained combat effectiveness throughout the engagement. Torres studied the tactical display showing the aftermath of humanity's first major engagement with the exterminator fleet. Debris fields marked where both human and alien vessels had died, but, crucially, none of that debris was drifting toward Council space. The enemy advance had been completely halted. Confirmed enemy casualties? Torres asked, though he already knew the numbers would be sobering. Complete destruction of the enemy vanguard, Okafor reported. 47 large-class vessels, over 300 support craft, and what appeared to be their command ship. No survivors detected, but our xenobiology teams report some interesting findings from the wreckage analysis. The holographic display shifted to show reconstructed images of the enemy vessels and their occupants. What they revealed challenged every assumption the galactic community had made about their attackers. The exterminator species were not the advanced technological civilization everyone had imagined. They were something far more disturbing, a synthetic intelligence network that had long ago consumed its organic creators and continued their programmed mission of galactic sterilization with mechanical precision. "They're not even truly alive," Torres observed, studying the recovered data. "Just machines following ancient programming to eliminate biological contamination from what they consider pristine space." A communication alert chimed through the command center. Ambassador Chen's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the Galactic Council chambers where she had maintained diplomatic coordination throughout the battle. "Admiral, the Council requires an immediate status report," Chen said, her diplomatic composure intact despite the strain visible in her features. "Several species are requesting detailed information about human capabilities after witnessing the engagement through our tactical feeds." Torres nodded grimly. The battle had been broadcast live to the Council chambers, giving peaceful species their first real glimpse of human military doctrine in action. What they had witnessed had fundamentally altered their understanding of their self-appointed protectors. "Tell them the truth, Ambassador," Torres replied. "We stopped the enemy advance, but this was only their scouting force. Intelligence analysis suggests the main exterminator fleet is approximately 50 times larger than what we just faced." The implications were stark. Humanity had sacrificed 2/3 of their available fleet to stop what amounted to a reconnaissance probe. The main enemy force would require resources and tactics that pushed far beyond current human capabilities. "There's more," Torres continued, highlighting new data on his tactical display. "The enemy has adaptive learning protocols. They analyzed our weapons, our ship designs, our tactical patterns during the engagement. When we meet them again, they'll be prepared for everything we used at Meridian Gate." Chen's expression remained diplomatically neutral, but Torres could see the concern in her eyes. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "We need every resource the Council can provide, and we need to fundamentally change our approach," Torres said bluntly. "This isn't a war we can win through superior firepower alone. We need to become something we've never been before." Back in the Council chambers, the delegates who had voted to trust humanity with their protection were grappling with the reality of what that trust meant. The tactical feeds from the Battle of Meridian Gate had shown them aspects of human nature they had never imagined possible. They had watched human crews fight damaged vessels until life support failed, using their final moments to ram enemy ships rather than surrender. They had seen captains deliberately sacrifice their vessels to protect damaged Allied craft during retreats. They had witnessed the calculated ferocity of a species that approached warfare as both an art and a science. But, most disturbing of all, they had seen how humans reacted when they realized the true scope of the threat facing galactic civilization. "The humans are requesting access to our most closely guarded technologies," reported Kethvar, his reptilian features reflecting a complex mixture of awe and terror. "Their Admiral Torres has submitted requests for quantum manipulation research, dimensional engineering data, and temporal mechanics theoretical frameworks." Speaker Prime Zach Th's mandibles clicked nervously. Those technologies were classified as too dangerous for military applications. The theoretical applications alone could destabilize entire star systems. Gordhack's massive stone features shifted into what might have been grim amusement. Destabilizing star systems appears to be exactly what the humans have in mind. Their tactical analysis suggests converting entire solar systems into weapons platforms. The scope of humanity's proposed strategy was breathtaking in its audacity. Rather than simply building more powerful ships, they intended to weaponize space itself. Stellar engineering projects that would turn stars into focused energy weapons. Gravitational manipulation systems that could tear apart enemy fleets at the quantum level. Dimensional rifts that would allow instantaneous deployment of defensive forces across vast distances. "They're asking us to help them become something beyond traditional predators," observed Ylandra, her photosynthetic skin displaying complex patterns of uncertainty. "They want to become apex predators over reality itself." Counselor Nthgral's aquatic features rippled with profound unease. "And if we provide these technologies, what assurance do we have that humanity will not eventually turn them against peaceful species?" The question hung in the chamber's recycled atmosphere like a toxic cloud. Every delegate understood the implication: they were being asked to provide their protectors with the tools to become the most dangerous species in galactic history. Ambassador Chen's voice cut through the uneasy silence. The same assurance you've always had, she said quietly. Our choice to protect rather than conquer. She gestured toward the tactical displays still showing the aftermath of the Meridian Gate engagement. You watched our crews die protecting your space. You saw ships sacrifice themselves to ensure the enemy advance was stopped before it could threaten Council worlds. That wasn't programming or instinct, that was conscious choice. The crystalline representative from the silicon-based collective chimed with frequencies that conveyed deep contemplation. But, the technologies you request could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Even trained predators might be corrupted by such capabilities. Might be, Chen acknowledged. But, the alternative is certain extinction for all peaceful species when the main exterminator fleet arrives. You have a choice between possible future threats and guaranteed immediate annihilation. She activated her datapad, and new projections appeared on the chamber's displays. Timeline analyses showing the approaching main enemy fleet, resource calculations for constructing the proposed superweapons, casualty estimates for conventional military resistance. Without these technologies, we estimate a 14% chance of successful defense against the main exterminator fleet, Chen continued. With them, our projections show an 87% probability of not just stopping the attack, but eliminating the entire synthetic network before it can threaten other galactic regions. The mathematics were unforgiving. Traditional military approaches would almost certainly result in the complete destruction of galactic civilization. Only by embracing technologies that bordered on the incomprehensible could they achieve victory. But, the risks were equally staggering. What safeguards do you propose? Asked Kethvar, his earlier hostility replaced by pragmatic concern. If humanity gains access to reality manipulation technologies, how do peaceful species protect themselves from potential human aggression in the future? Chen's response surprised everyone in the chamber. By becoming protectors yourselves. She gestured toward new data appearing on the displays, technical specifications for defensive systems, training protocols for peaceful species, shared technology arrangements that would ensure no single species maintain monopolistic control over the proposed superweapons. Humanity doesn't want to be your only guardians forever, Chen explained. We want to teach you to defend yourselves. The technologies we're requesting won't remain exclusively human, they'll be shared with Council species as they develop the capability to use them responsibly. The proposal was revolutionary. Rather than accepting permanent dependence on human protection, peaceful species could eventually develop their own defensive capabilities using the same advanced technologies. You're suggesting that peaceful species could become trained predators themselves? Asked Yolandra, her photosynthetic patterns shifting to reflect profound confusion. I'm suggesting that the distinction between predator and prey is often a choice rather than a biological imperative, Chen replied. Humans chose to become protectors rather than conquerors. Other species can make similar choices when circumstances require it. Admiral Torres's voice interrupted the philosophical discussion as his communication link reactivated. Ambassador, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the main exterminator fleet. They've begun acceleration toward Council space. Estimated arrival time has shortened to 6 weeks. The urgency was undeniable. Whatever decision the Council reached would need to be implemented immediately if there was any hope of mounting an effective defense. Torres continued his report. We've also received volunteer applications from civilian populations across 17 species. Apparently, the Meridian Gate engagement convinced a lot of peaceful species that they want to learn to fight. The statement was staggering. For the first time in galactic history, herbivorous and peaceful species were requesting military training. The approaching extinction event had awakened something in peaceful civilizations that they hadn't known existed, the willingness to fight for their survival. Chen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. It seems you're learning the difference between trained and wild predators faster than anyone expected. The question now is whether you're willing to trust yourselves with dangerous capabilities, just as you trusted humanity. The final vote was unanimous. Every Council species authorized the release of their most dangerous technologies to support humanity's desperate strategy. More importantly, they agreed to begin their own transformation from peaceful species into trained protectors. As the chamber emptied and delegates rushed to implement unprecedented mobilization orders, Ambassador Chen remained behind with Admiral Torres's holographic image. "Think it will work, Admiral?" she asked quietly. Torres's weathered features reflected grim determination. "Ask me again in 6 weeks, Ambassador. But, for the first time since this crisis began, I think galactic civilization might actually survive what's coming." The transformation had begun. Peaceful species were learning to fight, reality itself was being weaponized, and humanity had proven that trained predators could indeed choose to protect rather than conquer. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. In 6 weeks, they would discover whether trained predators could defeat extinction itself.